Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Ronin Nazarain Talks. I'm Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films.
I'm Nazarainprod from Nazarainprod Films.
and today we're joined by special guest Chris Mohan. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing all right. It's very rarely I get called special, but I'll accept it on any occasion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to stress he said special, not me.
That's fair.
Normality
has been resumed.
Nice welcome, yeah. And today we're just going to do a discussion about trilogies. So we're each going to give 3 favourite trilogies. Again, not necessarily the best trilogies, just our 3 of our favourites. 2 underrated trilogies and just a wild card, which can be good, bad, or ugly. So we'll just go around each turn. So we'll go Chris, Nazarain, and then myself. So Chris, do you want to just briefly talk about your first favourite trilogy?
Oh, my first favourite. Okay, since I'll get this out early so everybody can rearrange their lists and use the ones that are coming afterwards. So I'll do the Human Condition to start off with.
That was my first one, you bastard.
Well, I had a feeling that it was probably in everybody's already, so I thought if I'm going to go first, I may as well use that. And then
it's okay. I have backups. I'm fine.
I've come with backups as well. What to say about the Human Condition? It's one of those films. It's not in your favorite trilogies until you see the Human Condition, and then all of a sudden it just becomes the most obvious answer to this question. I think the skill of the filmmaking is on another level of. I can't believe somebody had the ideas, the gall, and the wherewithal to actually even put this together as an idea. One of the greatest individual performances in the history of cinema. I think it's easy to say. I don't know. What else can you say about the Human Condition other than it's utterly fabulous and life-changing?
I mean, it's one of those films where you do kind of beat yourself up that you haven't watched it earlier, but then you're so glad when you finally watch it. And like I've said before, it's amazing to get like a 90-minute film that is almost perfect and amazing. So to do it over 9 hours, it's pretty gobsmacking.
And 9 hours of consistently high quality, the whole way across. As intimidating as it may be, I think once you get over the first part, you have to see how the other 6 hours go. So it never really feels like a chore of a 9 hours. It just becomes, I've got to see what happens.
Yeah, once you get hooked into that character,
Indeed.
It doesn't matter if it's 12 hours long, you want to follow that character.
Yeah, but it's also an epic story because it changes location each story. Because, I mean, as one long story, it wasn't a trilogy now, it was also one long film, which a lot of trilogies don't work at because they try and say it's one long story and it's really not. But this one really is one long story and it's an epic because the guy changed a lot over those 3 films. And the locations change. It's never the same place each time. And it starts something up and you get more depth to the situation in each film. So each film, it builds upon the last one to create even more complications for the situation.
Yeah, and what I love about it is the fact the main character is not perfect. He's not this idealized portrait of a hero. He makes mistakes. And there's consequences for those mistakes, so he's not like perfect.
Yeah, that's a really interesting part because if you think about like classic film journeys, never mind trilogies, somebody who's that idealized is often portrayed as holier than thou. He's nearly a god figure, but actually it's his ideologies or his weakness in that he's blinded by his own ideologies and actually the practicalities of what that costs him, etc. Is actually his weakness. I think that's really fascinating. Yeah.
There's also a kind of contrast between him who sticks to his ideologies and other people who are around him who don't have ideology or betray them. So it's not one version's pure because you see that other people how not an ideology is also very dangerous and can cause mass destruction. So it's like, and actually by the final third, when they go to Russia, or they go to the top of China where the Russian influence is, you see the dark side of his ideology, and it's like, right, it's not a perfect thing. It's something that's got lots of downsides. So it really is pretty honest about this character and where some of his ideals lead if it's organized by people who are of a cynical point of view.
I also think it shows quite strongly, based on what you said, that ideologies are never the fault here. It's men that make the ideology imperfect or make it wrong. You know what I mean? This idea that, you know, communism as an idea is wrong is actually perpetrated by men as being the thing that corrupts it or otherwise, rather than it being the ideology that's wrong.
Yeah, because people go to the extreme with it and realize, no, it's a guide. It's not. It's not practical for every situation. It's a guide for this is how we can organize. You have to use your common sense after that to try and find the proper reality of how much do you want capitalism, how much do you want communism, where's the mixed point going to be? Instead of being like, oh, it has to be all this, it's like, no, it can't be all one thing. It's just not.
Yeah, because nothing's black and white. We all live our lives in the grey areas. So.
Apart from the film, it's black and white.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because apart from the central performances, it does look fantastic as well. Kobayashi's compositions are fantastic, which again, over a 9-hour journey is again hard to do and kind of baffling how it was actually done.
You see the brutalizing nature of both ideologies, capitalism and communism. You see how brutal both are, and how both destroy people en masse.
Yeah.
And they're basically fighting for these two ideologies that are destructive, and they were killing each other en masse for something that neither version of is very good. It's kind of it really kind of covers its own ideas in depth, but we're still telling a story that you can really follow.
Yeah, it's still a simple story despite all its depth and all its political viewpoints. It's still like one man's journey, which you can just watch it as that.
Or as the movie trailer should go, it was a story about a man and his
Exactly.
destiny. You know, I could sort of see the human condition being the basis for the next Star Wars trilogy, you know, in some sort of a way. You know, to put the hero's journey over the top of it, not have it quite as bleak.
Perhaps not, but yeah.
Well,
But back a little bit, but yeah, it could definitely be an archetype that you could follow.
Yeah. Right. So, do we want to hear more about human condition, or do we want to just cover these?
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, don't waste any more of your life.
Yeah,
like we did for not seeing it. So.
Yeah, and look at our channels for our videos on it as well, if you really want to. Because why not? Why not publicize our own stuff over here?
Yeah, because once you watch it, you'll want to do a video.
Yeah,
that's true.
So is it my turn then for the choice? Okay, so it's Chris took my first choice and brutally instantly. I'm going to go for the Dr. Mabuse trilogy, which is Dr. Mabuse, the Gambler, The Testament of Dr. Mabuse, and The Thousand Eyes of Dr. Mabuse. I'm a massive Fritz Lang fan. You know, hugely. And since we're going for depression, it's like you have to go to Fritz Lang after this. It's like after like The Human Condition, it's like how more depressing can you get? And it's like, well, who can top The Human Condition for depressing the audience? It's like Fritz Lang. I mean, really. To him, that's Tuesday, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, The Human Dr. Mabuse is like the pulp masterpieces of like organization and insanity. It is a commentary in the German mania for organization and how it leads to dark places and how it's really brutalizing. And these are exciting pulp tales, but they're a darkness to them. They're a real sense of nastiness about how the German culture can work and how the crime can organize into something that's very destructive. These are kind of like commentaries on what led to Hitler and what happened after Hitler and how this sort of sense of always organizing, always creating this sort of sense of methodology that's just based on results, how it can just drive people mad and create insanity that repeats itself no matter how bad it gets, which is the war. Lang came back after the war and still made another Mabuse film showing the taint of what happened was still there in the soul of the people. It was still always going to be ongoing. It's still something you want to be aware of, and it's like just this. And it's like the idea is basically his mania. Lang's mania is put into Mabuse. Lang was a crazy director, and he loved organization, and it was just this mania that was around Germany at the time. It wasn't just Lang; there was tons of people like that because they're trying to get out of the World War One situation. It's like there's a mania that actually created this much worse problem. So that's being Mabuse.
Yeah, I haven't seen the third one, and it's been years since I seen the first two. I need to
that was my issue with it as well. So it fell into the category of this might make it, but for the fact that I have not seen all three movies. The thing I'll say about Mabuse as well, because you're right in everything that you say there, but it has like a playfulness and a caricatureness, that he uses to kind of make it entertaining as well. So it's not all heavy, because those films are long.
I know.
And sometimes feel their length in some ways, but every time Mabuse comes on as a character to kind of stir things up, you want to see the resolution of that all the time, and that playfulness is needed. That they're great.
Yeah, it's playful, it's fun. I mean, Lang knows how to do fun, but it also comes back to depressing the hell out of you any given opportunity. Especially Testament, Dr. Mabuse, it's pretty much, I get banned because it was obviously looking at Nazi propaganda and how insane it all gets.
Yeah, and they're pretty influential films as well. They're almost kind of template films for what would come later.
Yeah, it's pretty much, if you want to make a thriller, you should watch some BC films, how you do it, like how you actually do it, how you focus the audience narrative, because these are the templates for, like, Fritz Lang created a lot of templates that have been used on and on since then. I mean, if you look at Die Nibelungen, you can see a massive influence on, like, the Japanese cinema, on the Kurosawa. I mean, the second half of Die Nibelungen, you can see Kurosawa in the making there. Like, obviously Kurosawa saw that film, You can see, like, he's invented some of the language that then other people are going to build upon for their epics.
Another film I have not got to the end of.
Yeah, me neither.
I started it so many times, and I enjoy it, but it's wistful, I think, is the thing that I would say about certainly the first hour or so of it. And it's like, right, okay, I'll come back and watch that later.
No, the second half is brutal. The second, it's first half's wistful, right? The second half is like the most brutal conclusion to an epic you'll ever see. It's like, oh my god, it's like the end of Hamlet. It's that kind of brutality. It's a completely different film. It changes halfway through to become something so much darker.
Once you get through the first 2.5 hours, it really picks up.
And maybe watch the second half first.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, no, but it's definitely worth it because it goes into places that are really dark. And I'm a massive Fritz Lang fan, so it's like one of those things. It's like
fabulous, yeah.
But Mabuse is full of energy and full of tension, and Lang knows how to ramp the tension up. And there's wonderful set pieces as well.
And another incredible central performance, as well. Like, just wow. Some of the best eyebrow and eye work I think that's ever been seen in cinema.
Yeah, certainly.
Yep. So I'll pass on to Ronin now, since I'm the only one who's seen this entire trilogy. I feel glad about that, actually. It's like, well, I made an achievement. I actually did something there.
Well, because we've got off to a depressing start, I'll start my number one choice with 3 happy-go-lucky films. So it's the Three Colours trilogy by Kieslowski, which is probably an obvious pick for myself. 2 of them are straight-up masterpieces, and the kind of underrated middle one might be not that far off, and actually perhaps has the biggest emotional wall about the 3 of them. You kind of fluctuate, well, I do anyway, between which one's my favourite, even though I think Blue is now my favourite by a little bit. even though the first one I saw was red. Not that they're specific and you have to see them in order or anything, which is probably just as well because I know the last one. But just 3 more towering achievements by Shklovsky. Again, critics of Shklovsky say, he doesn't provide answers in his films, but it's like some of the themes and questions he's raising are pretty big. The use of colour and image, Zbigniew Preisner's scores are magnificent. And just the tying together of characters and those themes within the films are just stunning. And again, central performances that are just absolutely fantastic. So not surprising for me, but the Three Colours trilogy.
Just a bit fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It's like, well, I don't have much more to say now.
I'm always a bit lost for words of what to say about Kieślowski in general, because his films, if you're like, this is a trilogy that could have been 3 separate films in its own way. There's, thematically linked, rather than necessarily story linked or otherwise. But his work transcends what the actual film is, if that makes sense. So by the time, it's one of those, if somebody wanted a way in to look at what cinephile or art house cinema is like, you've a film that's entertaining, and then when you sit down and think about it, it just takes your brain in a whole other direction. You look at the filmmaking, the use of color, especially throughout all his movies, is just phenomenal. How he uses it to enhance what's going on or otherwise. Wow, like Kieślowski as a filmmaker is hard to match.
Yeah, the way Three Colours Red ties together, and it's almost a time travel film and history repeating itself, and it's just beautifully done when it all comes together at the end. It's quite powerful.
Yeah, I've got to say, I kind of like White most, even though no one else seems to like White most.
White gets overshadowed.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not even saying it's the best one. It's the one I like most, even though I don't. I think the other two are probably better films. I just like that one. Just as a watching experience, I like that one more. But
I like how each of the 3 films changes in popularity of what is the cool kitsch answer at that time. So every year, people reassess it, and actually, the cool kitsch answer, is now blue again, because everybody starts off, I think, with blue as being their favorite at some stage, and then moves their way through, and then comes back around to being the 3 fabulous movies.
Yeah, I mean, they are terrific films. It's just like, half the thing is they're almost a mood, really, as much as the themes. There's something about the mood to them that you remember just as much as the characters and the themes. It's hard to place.
Because the plot is almost like a meandering river that Kieślowski's not really that interested in. So if you're looking for kind of plot-driven and narrative-driven, it's there, but it's not certainly up front.
It's funny because when I was thinking about the list as well, I was thinking about, Three Colours obviously is an obvious one to pick, although more obvious maybe for yourself than I kind of go, but I kind of forget what happens in most of the movies. If you were to talk about, like you were saying about plot, it's quite right to say it, they're all about mood and they're all about feelings and how they affect you.
Yeah, except this one was in my backup once in case I ran out. Really?
Yes.
But I kind of assumed it was going to get chosen anyway by somebody. So I it was like, I'll put his back up. I don't think I'll even get there. But it's funny because I always think that Double Life of Veronique is almost a part 4, even though it's it always feels like
that's
to me
right.
with them because they come out at the same time. And I actually saw Veronique before I saw the Three Colours trilogy. So I saw it in kind of weird order, or maybe I didn't. I can't remember. They all feel the same time period.
Yeah.
And it's another colour as well. It's a yellowish kind of hue.
Yellowy green.
Yeah.
So it's obviously just tragic that when he retired and then announced he was unretiring to do the Heaven, Hell and Purgatory trilogy. Unfortunately, we never saw that from him.
Yeah.
So, Chris, do you want to pick your second?
I'll pick the second one, which is another one that nearly everybody probably will have on their list, which is the Apu trilogy.
Yeah, that's one that I had, but never mind.
Yeah, that's grand. We get to talk about Apu.
It's not my list because I've yet to see that.
Oh,
it's one of my blind spots.
It's another bleak. What is it?
Actually, we seem to be going for the happy-go-lucky stuff.
I'm glad that my third pick, and nobody else will have the third pick, and one was certain, is definitely the opposite. Is Apu is one of those sets of films that I think Satyajit Ray tried to one up himself every film to see. You thought the last one was heart-wrenching and powerful. The next one, I got you. The whole way through it, telling the story of a young boy, Apu, growing up in very poor conditions in India, and as he progresses through his life. And I think the bit that I really like about Apu is the fact that it is very much a life. There are events that happen in each film that change intrinsically who he is as a person, and change his outlook. And even by the end of the third film, he has nearly become the fourth iteration of himself because of the events of the third film have changed him and done that. And you get to see very much the change of a person in terms of circumstance and how their class changes with their outcome, how they go through. It's an encapsulation of a life from start to about halfway.
Yeah. So he could have done 6.
He could have done 6, indeed. What was he thinking?
I think the merchandising rights. Yeah, to theme park.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Toys.
But again, this is the beginning of his career, so this isn't a director in the middle of his career who's honed his skills. I mean, he starts off with Pather Panchali. He had no film training. He knew very little about how to make a film, but he just has this natural eye for beautiful composition. And it's just, I mean, yeah, he had the cinematographer and knew who he was doing, and again, he did the music. It was just like a fully formed artist, even though he didn't have much training. And it's just lyrical.
So true. He had a style from very early on, from very first film. It's like these are characteristics of his filmmaking that are very clear from that point of view, and it's like,
and it's a very kind of pastoral and painterly. Certainly, the first film is, but as he progresses into the cities as well. His eye for composition is pretty amazing and just natural. Nothing's like forced. And even scenes that kind of seem to meander, they get to where they need to get to. And again, characters that you give a shit about, despite what life throws at them.
It's interesting, like his characters especially. You think of the first, I think of Pather Panchali, and you think of the granny kind of character is almost like a comic character, but he doesn't waste it. He uses that kind of caricature archetype and then kind of flips it at you and throws it at you and basically says, so you thought that's what this was about, and it's not about that. It's so powerful.
Yeah. And the things that happen to the characters, they're not overly melodramatic because they pretty much happen to everybody. Yeah. And again, that's what gives you the universality of his work. Because yes, we're seeing a part of the world that we've never seen before, but because it is stuff that happens to everybody, unfortunately, at times, it's universal. So that, I think, is why cinema is so popular and why it's so good as well.
And it goes to show you, like, cinema as an art form can do things that other art forms just can't. That kind of you see what the character could be and what could happen to them, and then whether they get there or not. Like A Person Sir, the third film, is my favorite because of that. I think because you actually get to see the resolution of it very clearly rather than just kind of this open end and the possibilities. And he still has possibilities at the end of it, but you definitely see the change in him and the resolution. Oh man, love it.
Yeah, but he's another character who isn't idealized. He makes mistakes. He's far from perfect, so again, it's not this holy character that's held up.
Yeah. And this overriding idea that no matter what happens to you, you can be okay. You can adjust, you can come through it, and it'll change you certainly, but you can move on with life, etc. From it. Oh, Enough to say about Apu. Amazing.
Yeah.
You should watch it, Peter.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not like I'm an anti-Apu trilogy thing. It's just like I haven't got around to it yet. It's like there's lots of films. There's so many films.
There's just so many films. You're 100% right. Yeah.
So do you want to go with your number 2?
Okay, my number 2 is kind of similar. I wasn't sure if I should do a fun one or something similar. I'll go for the similar one. I'm going for the Before trilogy. Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. This is a more modern film set of CV, so it may shock Ronin to his core.
I've never seen any of them, so.
It's 1980.
Yeah, it's right. So this is basically starts in the early 90s, and it's Richard Linklater, and he made these films every 10 years. Well, I think I've stopped now. And basically, it's a couple meeting 10 years later and getting together. Then the actual what happens after the marriage. So it's about the kind of relationship between young love, slightly more mature love, and then experienced love. And it's like it's just how people change and how they're flawed and how they're. So it starts out with an American Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy plays the French girl who they meet up in Venice as they just start talking. And it's not just a bit of it's not really, there is a romantic side to it, but it's also talking about romance, taking it apart, because these two people are so self-aware about their own feelings and issues, and they can't quite just fall in love. They have to analyze it all and be cynical about it, because they're teenagers who think, or young adults who think they're above it all in some ways, even though they're not, they're human beings. So the first one is very romantic. I saw it in the cinema when it was first released. The second one, Before Sunset, is basically they meet up 10 years later, because they haven't seen each other for 10 years. They're meant to meet up later, and something happened, and they couldn't meet up. And Hawke's character's written a book, and it's by them finding out what's happened to each other's lives in those 10 years, and how things haven't been as satisfying as they expected through life. They thought the ideals of what life would be, and it turns out it's much tougher than they thought, and they're much more compromised than they thought, and they're not as cool anymore, and they're not as smart ass anymore, and they're a bit more worn down. And it's by them getting together and actually consummating the relationship. The third one is about them 10 years later, and they've actually been married for 10 years, and they have resentments. They see each other's flaws now. They're not just a romantic ideal anymore. They see each other as flawed people, and some of the flaws that each other has really is under their skin now, and it's about that relationship, and how does they make it last, even though they seem to be on the verge of like splitting, and it's like, what does it make the relationship actually mean to them? And it's about that kind of how to kind of rediscover that without doing a corporate engine or something. So it's an interesting trilogy about romantic feelings and reality, and how they mix together in someone's head.
Another one I haven't seen the third film of. But yeah, that Linklater obviously did this again in Boyhood of taking people, at stages through life and not doing it in like this contrived way, but actually waiting a specific amount of time and then sticking a camera in front of them and actually capturing them at the moment. I know in Boyhood he did it, and he kind of took, he had a framework of what he wanted to work in, but he kind of let the story evolve naturally over time. His daughter was in it then, wasn't it, etc. And doing it, and I wonder how much of the Ford trilogy was the same thing, whether Delpy and Hawke kind of went, actually, I think they should do this, or they would be in this place, compared to what he maybe had originally planned.
Yeah, because they wrote it with him. I mean, there was all three of them writing it, so there was always a bit where they were in life. I think how they were in life always affected the film. So it became about that, and about how difficult it was for them, and just difficulties of life. Which is like one of those things that it feels like the film is complete now. It doesn't feel need another one. But I've made another one in 10 years. They haven't done one for the 2020s. But maybe they've just run out of stuff to say. I don't know. But I'm pretty happy to just be a trilogy. It seems to work really well as a trilogy.
Well, Ethan Hawke does Marvel stuff now, so he's not going back.
He does Paul Schrader as well. Come on.
He did.
Yeah, no, it's it is a kind of a tricky thing to pull off, but yeah, it's I pretty much assume no one else is going to pull this one up. So
yeah, I mean, obviously I'm aware of it, but it's not really my bag, to be perfectly honest. But I'll maybe see it one time.
Maybe he'll lure himself to see it since it's been mentioned.
Because they are short, aren't they?
Yeah, they're about 90 minutes. But the third one's pretty dark. The third one's a lot darker than the first two. It's got a much more mature and angry feel to it, like middle-aged people who are pretty pissed off how the world's going, how their lives are going.
I mean, if halfway through one of them dies in a bizarre gardening accident, then maybe I might watch it.
Now you're speaking Ronin's language. He's in.
Yeah, if something involves an undertaker, maybe.
Yeah. Julie Delpy's legs fall off halfway through.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so we're now going to Ronin's second choice.
Yes, as Chris pinched Apu, again, I'll go for a fairly well-known one and obvious one. One of the films is in the argument for my favourite film of all time. One of the films I didn't really appreciate because it's a remake of another film that I love more, but I've grown to like it. And the middle film I always thought was very good, but that has went even higher in my estimation, and it's the Dollars trilogy. I must have seen The Good, the Bad and the Ugly probably about 100 times and probably 30 times before I really knew what a good film was, but I knew certainly Good, the Bad and the Ugly was a good film. I think, Fistful of Dollars I've always preferred to Jimbo, but I kind of like it more than I used to. And for a few dollars more is the one that's just went higher and higher in my estimation, especially because it's the Volante that I always knew, but obviously I've went on a more mature Volante journey the last couple of years, so now his spaghetti western stuff's almost an outlier now, whereas that's what you were expecting from Volante all the time. And The Good, Bad and Ugly for me is probably the greatest film about men who respect each other but would quite happily kill each other as well. I don't think it's ever been done better than in The Good, the Bad and Ugly. There's a respect there, but they would also quite happily kill each other without a second's thought. They're a lot of fun, obviously influential. It's bizarre that they don't really have special limited editions, which is kind of surprising. But again, it's more mainstream, but they're just so fantastic and endlessly rewatchable.
Yeah, I never even bothered putting that on my list, and you're going to take it. I was like, well, what's the point?
Yeah. It was on my reserve list. It was sitting here as I moved from one pile to the other one as we're going. But it's a bit sad that all we're left with is this kind of.
Yeah, they're going in 4K in America now, so
they're kind of over have them out, indeed.
Yeah.
But it's Leone's filmmaking, remakes or otherwise aside. Like Leone's way of making westerns kind of should have been wrote and done by the time we get to a certain point, because that kind of long drawn out pensive look, all that kind of stuff. You should have been sitting there going, "Oh Jesus Christ, we could have cut an hour out of this quite easily if Egypt." But it's kind of delicious, It's kind of great to watch it. Something that you kind of want to see more of. And I often say when people talk about what's the greatest film of all time, any of these Leone films are acceptable answers. There's answers that are definitely wrong. right? Of which I probably have a couple, but these are acceptable answers because the craft and the filmmaking, the storytelling, and all is otherworldly.
Because that's the thing. Clint Eastwood never really understood that long, drawn out stuff. He came from the kind of Don Siegel school of bish bash bosh, and that's apparently he just does stuff in first takes or second takes and moves on. And he never understood Leone's kind of long drawn out stuff, but that's probably because Leone is going to be remembered as one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, and Clint Eastwood isn't. So
is he not? Oh, come on.
I don't think so. I could be wrong, but
I think he has a couple of films worth talking about, and a couple of films that we should never talk about again. He's that director for me.
He's more meat and potatoes.
He is certainly.
Yeah, less operatic.
Indeed.
Yes. Sorry about this. I'm just checking something. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually. I think we did Serge the own thing on here. I remember pretty much admitted that my favourite is actually the middle one, for a few dollars more. I just like it more because I like the Mortimer character, and his story is the most emotional story of the three. It's just like I just think Lee Van Cleef is a terrific central actor for sympathetic badass, basically. And just the story, plus Volante going so over the top.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they think that marijuana does to you, but
that's the one that always comes up in the commentary with Christopher Failing. He's like they perhaps didn't know.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because Volante going way over the top. It's like it's just like it's almost like his version of the gas from Blue Velvet. Like it's like he needs to push him a bit further up.
Like me, match me, Sydney.
Yeah. Yeah, he's so over the top. I mean, no matter how great Good, Bad, Ugly is, it doesn't have Volante, which is it's the kind of thing that it does not have. It's kind of like, which is why I think I just prefer for a few dollars more. Just something about it. Plus that ending a few dollars more. I mean, Clint Eastwood problems with his arithmetic. Yeah.
I mean, it probably is Lee Van Cleef's finest performance because he does get like a big meaty role for somebody that was always the third villain from the left.
Yeah, because I mean, I think the second one is really Lee Van Cleef's film.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood is basically this lead supporting part in that film.
Yeah.
He's involved, but it's not really his film. Well, the third one is definitely his film. Even though there's other actors, it's his film. Even though Eli Wallach thinks it's his film.
Yeah. I mean, The Good, the Bad, and Ugly is probably one of those films that's been in my life the longest.
Yeah.
As far as the number of times, like I say, I watched it before I really knew what film was. So it's an argument for the film that's been in my life the longest.
Yeah. It's funny because Eli Wallach's poems should not work, but it's brilliant. Yeah. It's so over the top. It should not work, but it is just great.
And also the last 20 minutes is just pure gold.
Yeah. It's one of those things, they only couldn't really top himself after that one. Is like, even if you look at Once Upon a Time in the West, there's lots of long things. They're not quite as long as The Good, the Bad, and Ugly. It's like, the owner's like, there's just no way I'm topping this.
And then the cliffhanger at the end, it's like, is he really going to do that? Is he really going to leave him like that? That's like, because you do think, oh yeah, he might actually, because I did a count once, and Clint Eastwood does kill more people than Lee Van Cleef and Eli Wallach do. So, quote unquote, the good actually kills more people than not do.
Yeah, that's not a shocker in any way.
No.
It's that lawful good though. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's implied that Lee Van Cleef killed a lot of people behind the scenes that you never see.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like if you actually figured it out, he probably killed way more if he, and most of the people Clint killed were Lee Van Cleef's people. So it's like,
yeah. Plus, Lee Van Cleef probably enjoyed it more.
Oh yeah, he definitely did.
But he shoots the guy through the pillow and has that wonderful laugh. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
because he always likes to see a job through.
Yep. So we're going to the third choice then, of the favourites.
Third choice. Right, I'll go for these little-known films. Lord of the Rings.
All right.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah. I always think it's interesting about Lord of the Rings because there are lots of versions of Lord of the Rings, but most people still have these DVD versions on their shelves because they're still the best looking ones that there are. Lord of the Rings, the only great fantasy films ever made.
Au contraire. What do you see my choice?
Interesting.
So I'm going for a fun final one as well.
Oh, that's good. Well,
and I will contradict you, sir. I will contradict you.
I await with bated breath. The ones that okay. How best is the most of what people seen in their head or something like that. Something I don't know. I'm right there. Lord of the Rings as an idea was made as a field animation in the 70s, the first one anyway, which is pretty good. And then Peter Jackson obviously decided that he would give it a go properly, and he succeeded. Right, he succeeded in a way that nobody else has been able to do it. I think since, in a way, even though people have spent lavish amounts of money on numerous other kind of things. Aragorn tried and failed miserably. You know, there are lots of things that went on. It was done on a scale in a way that kind of blew me away. I actually watched the first 2 hours of Fellowship of the Ring with youngest the other day. Obviously, the 4-hour version was a step too far, so we got 2 hours into it. I didn't actually realize Peter Jackson was in it.
Yeah, he's in every one of them.
He pops up. I again, totally oblivious, other than who is that? And as it flicks past them for a second, I go, no, it's Peter freaking Jackson. It's gone through. Amazing. I have to say, I forget how good they are, and then you rewatch them, and then you think, okay, this is storytelling done with no hurry. He's not in any hurry to tell the story, but he gets all the details right on it, and I think they're pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think extended versions are better though. I think they're much more relaxed, and you get a lot more detail. Yeah, I watched them over Christmas again, and they really hold up really well. But what do you think of the Hobbit trilogy?
He took that language style. He made something 3 movies long that he probably should have just done in 1. To be perfectly honest, I mean, they're not terrible. I mean, they were very much. It's hard not to watch those films and think, God, the studios needed to make a lot of money out of these, so we needed to really draw it out and bring it in the 3 bits. Just if they weren't 3 films, I think they'd be well thought of. Whereas they aren't well thought of because it's an awful lot of fluff. Yeah, a lot of fluff in there. Like, it's not a long book at all.
Yeah,
the first 45 minutes of the first Hobbit film is just absolutely dire. It really is. It could have been 10 minutes.
And it's funny because it's sort of, when you watch it, it impacts your memory of what the Lord of the Rings was until you rewatch it, if that makes sense. Because in sort of like color in the blanks kind of thing, The Hobbit is sort of trying to fit that form of it. And you know, you kind of think when you've seen The Hobbit, oh, that's what Lord of the Rings was like, or Fellowship was like, and it's not.
Yeah, because I mean, in there, and one thing I noticed, I watched all the films over Christmas, was basically Lord of the Rings. You get basic introductions of characters, and then you get much more on the run as they're going through the story. And Hobbit, they try and stop the story to tell you all the characters, and you've forgotten by the time you get to the end of the film, because they don't do that stuff during the actual adventures. And it's like, well, you've forgotten your own way of doing it.
Yeah.
Plus, Lord of the Rings looks better. I mean, the CGE in The Hobbit, especially when they're going down the water in the barrels, is just, it's like 1997 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there was a purpose, and the villains in that film work because, you know, they're intimidating. You with Christopher Lee, you know, as one of your main villains. That's always a good sign. That's cast and it pays for itself in about 2 minutes.
I will say, CGI dragon.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I'm not really a Lord of the Rings fan. I think the films they're fine and they're watchable, but for me, they're not like great. But again, that's just my opinion. My opinion is not fact, as we've established.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy them, but they're not my favourites. But I really, plus Viggo Mortensen as a lead, he really carries a lot of those films. He does so much work. You actually, if you watch him, it's like he's carrying them quite a bit more than you remember.
It's interesting because I watched it and he does carry it. Everybody else is kind of like Elijah Wood's not a great presence on screen. I don't think he's a particularly great actor. Sean Astin's quite good. Pippin and Mary are probably the other two that really carry that film through some of the dark things. But everybody else, Orlando Bloom, I think, is very nothing. Hugo Weaving's nothing. Liv Tyler's nothing in that, so it's kind of more than the sum of its parts. It's kind of spectacle over substance. I think in a lot of ways. I think you're right, probably in that regard. Yeah. But as somebody that had read those books, and you're like, oh my god, they're going to make a movie of it. They're going to fuck it up.
Yeah,
just like they ever did, and they didn't. So anything that wasn't completely messed up, I think, was a big win.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, they're fine films.
Yeah,
and as you say, they're not a disaster, and they're not. And you kind of, as you say, you kind of used the same template in The Hobbit, and I think that was probably a mistake.
Yeah.
You know, the kind of expanding of the Sylvester McCoy character in The Hobbit when he was in the book for like a brief kind of mention.
Yeah.
He gets a whole subplot, and it's like some things just don't need expanding.
Fantasy done wrong is usually a travesty. I mean, that Wheel of Time TV series is a pretty great example of it done horribly wrong. I just don't. It's not worth it.
But they just think, oh, that was successful, so we'll just do something similar.
Again.
But
yeah. Okay, so
I can relax now. Oh yeah.
I mean, you can certainly feel Jackson's enthusiasm for the Lord of the Rings that perhaps you can't feel in The Hobbit.
Yeah, it's a contractual thing. I mean, I do really wish we'd now seen the tour version, because it was maybe shorter and it would have been like, I think it would have been a much more interesting version. Because he was fresh to it, you'd have got a fresh set of eyes to the whole thing that you don't get in this Jackson ones. But we'll try and avoid doing another with The Hobbit, because it's the Lord of the Rings themselves are good films.
Yeah.
So my fantasy ones, because I thought I was going to end it also in fun for this, favourites, is the Sinbad films, the Ray Harryhausen Sinbad films. Not great films before we even start. You know, the third one's not that great compared to the other two, but the first two are really fun. Yeah. And they're so enjoyable. The whole films are so enjoyable. And I think that's as a favourite thing. It's just like, these ones are so enjoyable. The monsters are great. The first two Sinbads themselves are great.
Yeah.
The actual actors understand what film they're in. The villains are great with Tom Baker in the second one. Really going way over the top. And the villain in the first one's great fun too. It was terrific monsters, you know. It's just so much fun throughout. It's just so enjoyable. And you know, the first one, you get the first version of the skeleton fight. You go into islands, mysterious islands all the time. You just get so much good stuff in these three films that is just astonishing. And they all kind of mingle together in your head. It's like, I mean, the one that stands out is the second one because it's more cohesive plotting, but they all kind of mingle together. I think the second one is the highlight, but they're just
you
so
kind
good.
of forget which monster appears in which one. I mean, I've got a soft spot for Eye of the Tiger, and because of the golden bull and stuff.
I know. I mean,
it's just wonderful.
It's one of those ones that's more flawed than the first two, but still enjoyable. I've still watched it so many times.
And when the witch turns back from the bird, but her foot's still like the bird's foot, is just a wonderful little touch.
Yeah, it's.
And we're all of a certain vintage on this where, you know, the Sinbad movies, the Harryhausen movies were the Sunday afternoon kind of entertainment. They were Harryhausen movies on, but you know, it didn't didn't matter. You were going to sit and watch it, and you were kind of going to marvel at the animation and the effects, which in some ways still knock the piss out of everything that's out the cinema now, and in their own ways, there's kind of the animatronics of it. Amazing.
Yeah, there's a poetry to it.
Yeah, I've been watching on a projector, and they just look gorgeous. They just look so good, and just imagination of them all. How they respect the myths, but don't overdo it. They can change things around to get the basic story they need, and just the atmosphere of them is just so enjoyable. Even doesn't matter that some of the acting's dodgy. That's adds to the charm. There's certain actors in these films are not good, but there's other ones that are really fun. It just doesn't matter. It's all part of the mix.
Including Sinbad himself. I mean, the fact that they're so successful with Sinbad being such a non-event in some ways is a testament to kind of the filmmaking itself.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing I said earlier. I mean, the first two Sinbads, the first one, he wasn't a good actor, but he was a good athlete, and the fights were all great fun. Second one, it was John Philip Law, who was Diabolique and for Mario Bava, and he was probably the most fun Sinbad. Even though it wasn't a deep character, he did a lot of fun with it. Even though Tom Baker suggests he's a bit dull behind the scenes. Yeah. And one of his wonderful interviews where he just slugs off everybody.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah. It's so much fun. Yeah, and Caroline Munro from Hammer films in there as well. And the third one, less so, but still, I think that was the one where it was John Wayne's son. It was like, he was a blandest Sinbad. It was like, part of it was only a fourth one, Sinbad Goes to Mars, which we never got, and it was like, oh, a shame. That'd have been insane. Harryhausen Mars. It would have been a John Carter Harryhausen.
Yeah, how did he go to Mars?
Who cares?
I just maybe fell off the end of the world and then went to Mars.
I don't know.
That's Discworld, it works like that, I have to say, Peter, when you said you had a fantasy trilogy coming up, my mind is just erased with you're going to include Mirror Mask, Dark Crystal, and Labyrinth in the conversation of it. Okay, this is a choice.
No, it wasn't any of that. I haven't even seen Dark Crystal. Have you yet to see Dark Crystal?
It's all right.
Yeah. So, Ronin, you have to top Sinbad and Lord of the Rings. Give you a best shot.
Well, this trilogy is probably objectively the worst that we've discussed, but I don't care. The fact of the matter is the world is a terrible place, and sometimes you need a laugh. So it's the Naked Gun trilogy. You can draw a line in the sand of when Leslie Nielsen died, the world got shitter. And these films, along with Police Squad, they just put a smile on their face. They shouldn't be funny, but Leslie Nielsen does it with such conviction because he's playing it straight. He's not winking at the audience. It's a wonderful character who blindly thinks he is doing what's right. The one-liners are fantastic, but it's the little one-liners that kind of go by. It's not so much the slapstick, even though that is funny. But they just put a smile on your face. Yes, they're objectively not that good once you get past the first one, but it just puts a smile on my face, and you just can't put a price on that these days. Especially when you see people trying to do it, and there's so many bad versions of these films that are just unwatchable. So it's actually quite hard to do. It's one of those things that go, oh yeah, these are easy to do. It's like they're not really.
Wayans brothers tried it for years. Yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's also Police Squad, obviously. 50. Yeah. And my favourite line was always, I don't know much, it was kind of like putting in boxing. All I know is never betting the white guy.
Yeah. My favourite is the guy in the Protection Racket episode, and the guy goes, who are you and how did you get in here? And he goes, I'm a locksmith. And I'm a locksmith. Or in Police Squad, it's like, could you describe the man? 6'2", moustache. That's an awfully big moustache. It's funny. Or it's like Lieutenant, the feeling's mutual.
I think I've seen
it doesn't even make sense, but it's just funny because Leslie Nielsen just delivers it brilliantly.
I think the third one was the first one that I've seen, and obviously they were quite hyped by the time 3.5 come out. But I think I watched it and went, I just don't get this. As you say, objectionably not great movies.
Yeah.
The humor is certainly of a variety. Of being flat slapstick and like terrible puns or otherwise. But it ages so well, but once you go back and realize actually, I've seen Police Squad now, I totally get what this is.
What's Norbert doing in Detroit? Give him a pair of pants and put him in a bus.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I remember watching Police Squad as a kid.
Yeah,
it's funny to see them making a movie of Police Squad. That's weird.
Yeah.
Plus they're short, because if they made them like 2 hours, it would just be too long. But they're all like they're only 80 odd minutes each. So.
Yeah, because Joe Dante did one of his Police Squads. He did one of the Police Squads. I think it was one of his episodes. I remember once where they're when a car's getting chased and they cut, and it's a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica, from Battlestar Galactica firing at it, and it's like, that's so wonderfully stupid. That's just great.
It's just the stuff of like people shooting each other behind trash cans, and then it pulls back and they're literally like a foot away from each other.
Yeah.
Stuff that shouldn't be funny, but it just is.
Yeah. I mean, I like the first one best. The second one's actually got a charm to it. It's not as good as number one, but it's still got a charm to it. Third one is starting to wear thin a bit, but still they're fun.
But these are favourites, not best.
Yeah,
I know
that's
that
true.
objectively they are not great films, but they put a smile on my face.
So we've got runners up now. Did you have
two underrated.
Two underrated, and then you have a wild card.
Yeah. So Chris, if you want to,
my first of my underrated
one.
I was going to go one of two directions with this. We are going for the Toy Story trilogy. 1, 2, 3, and I know there's 4 of them now, but I try to think that the fourth one doesn't exist. It was an afterthought. It was never designed as a 4, so I'm going for 3. I could have went for Madagascar as well, because I think it's amazing. I think both films peak at the third one. I think when I did my thing on the perfect movie, I think Toy Story 3 is just otherworldly for the reasons actually when you did your bit with the Pixar, Up and Toy Story 3, I think really speak to adults in ways that maybe some of the other ones don't that kind of common life. Obviously, Toy Story when it came out was like this technical marvel to start off with. It was like people were like, oh my god, look at the quality of the storytelling. I think the first one actually looks quite bad when you watch it today, especially considering kind of the level of Pixar I've ever had since. But I think especially by the time you get to 2 and 3, the quality of the storytelling, the quality of the writers, the way that you use the incredible voice acting talent again wasn't done to that level before. Tom Hanks and Tim Allen especially are just fabulous in those characters. Tim Allen was so good that I thought they could make a movie without him.
Yeah, that's the thing. I like the second one best.
The second one is the one that I think most people accept as best, but I think as an adult watching that nostalgic thing of leaving home, growing up, getting too big for your toys, all that kind of stuff. I think that touches me up, putting it together with the idea that I'm now a father and all that kind of stuff, and you see it happening again in front of your eyes. It just touches a little nerve in me that this kind of goes, wow. Plus the stakes at the end, I really thought everybody was going to die. Spoilers.
Yeah. It's interesting you say it peaks at 3, because obviously trilogies don't always peak at 3. And
that's right.
They don't peak at 3. 3 is kind of the afterthought to kind of finish it off.
Godfather, Alien, don't fall into that, at all.
Well, I'm a big fan of Alien 3. I will fight for Alien 3.
Yeah, I like the Alien 3 work cut.
I mean, I do agree. Alien 3 is the most interesting of the 3 movies, I think, by a long while. Back to the Future is another one, the third one. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I've seen it all the way through, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. But yeah,
Back to the Future wasn't going to make this list.
We needed another body here to bring those kind of ones to the thing, because Back to the Future, if the third film had been good, would have made my list. I think Back to the Future is the epitome of that era of growing up.
Yeah, well, the third one's fine. It's just not as good as the first two. Is the problem?
It's not. It's not really much of a Back to the Future film either. Like it's very much a Western. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, I mean I enjoy it, but it does feel slightly different from the first two. It's different ambitions. But it's just fine. It's one of those ones that's fine. It's enjoyable. It's just not quite the same level. The first two were really ambitious for what they were. The third one wasn't, and it kind of you feel it.
First two are really smart, and the third one's a western, a love story. You know, it's not to say it's a bad movie, but it's not the other two. But Toy Story, yes, I'm a big fan of.
So this is my trilogy, right?
First underrated.
This is your first underrated, indeed.
Oh, okay. I'm going for the 3 and 4 Musketeers and Return of the Musketeers.
Good.
But because the first two are genuinely brilliant. First two are genuinely wonderful films. The Return of the Musketeers isn't, but I still enjoy it. So it's why it couldn't go up to the top level. But the first two are so good, though. And the third one get hammered with problems of rights and budget and its tragedy without Kinnear. It just had so much bad luck. It just couldn't work at a certain point. But it's still enjoyable to see them. But the first two are just so good. The first two are so visual, so entertaining. The characters are great. It's like a textbook of how to make a swashbuckler. I don't think anyone's ever going to do swashbuckler as well as the first two Musketeer films. They're kind of like the perfect example of how to do it.
Yeah, plus with Richard Lester, it's another ridiculous cast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So that's one of my two Christopher Lee ones that I promised Ronin.
Christopher Lee's really good. Yeah, I couldn't think of the second one.
Yeah, because I said I had 2 films with Christopher Lee in it, 2 trilogies, and it wasn't the Lord of the Rings. So
yeah.
So the Musketeer films, like Charlton Heston as Richelieu, Michael York as a perfect D'Artagnan, Oliver Reed, dominating the whole series of films. Because it's his film. The second one's his film, really.
Yeah.
Frank Finlay, Richard Chamberlain, everybody who is really good in these films. Everybody knows what they're doing. Even the silly stuff works. Even Faye Dunaway and way over the top works. It's just perfect. And some of the jokes, the throwaway jokes are hilarious. How to send up the people they're meant to be protecting constantly, just showing these people are morons.
Yeah, it's another film that looks simple and easy, but it's been done and has failed so many times since.
Yeah, every time you hear about the Three Musketeers getting remade, it's almost a dread. It's almost a threat now. It's like, it's been done. You just leave it alone now. It's been done perfect. You don't need to just re-release the Lester films.
Yeah, we're probably overdue another version.
I don't bring it up. Please don't. Maybe someone might hear you.
Can I be the one to realise I didn't even realise it was the second and the third one? There you go.
Well, the first two are basically the same as the novel,
yeah.
Half, and then the final one is Return of the Musketeers, is based on the novel 20 years later. But you've also got the Man in the Iron Mask, which has the Musketeers in it as well.
That's true.
But that wasn't a Richard Lester one, which would have been fun to see him do that as well.
Yeah. And the cartoon series, of course.
D'Artagnan and the Musketeers. Yes.
I own that.
I was actually going to ask anyone wouldn't that, because I was just curious. And
I own it. I found it the other day. I thought I'd lost it, and then I found it again, and all was well with the world, all for one and all for one. Muskehounds are always ready,
Yeah. So that was my first choice of the underrated.
Yeah, so for underrated, I'm going to go to Japan. One of my favourite filmmakers. And it's the Outrage trilogy by Kitano.
Oh.
Now these are the 3-disc version. These are not prime Kitano. A lot of the expressionistic flair is removed from them. These are a lot more sober, even though the third film is a bit more flamboyant with a couple of more flamboyant characters. You could say, there's a lot of men sitting around in rooms talking. It's perhaps not as fluid or as energetic as some of his earlier great works. But I think as a trilogy, it's really underrated. And again, Kitano, who at times looks as though he's asleep when he's acting in his films, certainly his later ones. It's grim, it's bleak. You could argue you sometimes lose track of what character they're talking about because there's a much bigger cast and it's a more kind of labyrinthine kind of plot about power struggles and things like that. But while it's not prime Kitano, it's well worth checking out. And again, as you're saying about Toy Story, I think this one, the third one's actually the best one out of the film. You could argue they're all about 10 minutes too long, which is probably a bit fair. But I do think they're underrated and should be seen more.
So, I haven't seen any of them. I've got the first one. I've had the first one on streaming, but haven't watched it yet. So I'll have to get to that.
They are much more somber and kind of grim and less colourful than some of these other films. Right. But if you get into that mood, they are rather wonderful.
These are living up their name of being underrated, as in, weren't even on my radar as far as options in terms of trilogy. That's quite cool.
So your second underrated one, Ned?
So my second underrated one is the Jersey trilogy, which I do not own any physical releases of. So it's the Kevin Smith, Clerks, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy. Which I have to realize, I didn't actually realize was properly a trilogy, even though they, in retrospect, after having seen them, I kind of went, of course they are. Kevin Smith's a kind of weird filmmaker because outside of these three films, I don't think he's any good at all. Jane Silent Bob, etc. Dogma's okay, everything else is okay, but Clerks as a shoestring kind of film is kind of astonishing. Mallrats and Chasing Amy are both a lot of fun. I think there's more fun in those films than he has in any of the rest of them. I think he kind of started to believe the hype or whatever it was after those. But I think as far as three films go, I think they're all pretty good and pretty good independent filmmaking of in the 90s or whatever from Kevin Smith. I made a fortune out of them. Let's be honest, he made a career out of it.
Are they not doing another Clerks film?
Yeah.
But there was. The
trailer's just out, the new final one. So I didn't really mind Clerks 2. It wasn't great, but I didn't mind it.
Was okay. It was one of
those
first one has like a kitsch kind of feel to it of just kind of people in a shop. That's it. Let's stick a camera in there and then let's record it. Whereas Clerks 2 felt like a movie.
Yeah.
But so that's a trilogy in its own right, then.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same feeling with Kevin Smith where I like his first few films and then he just gets self-indulgent really quickly. And you have to kind of, some are okay, some are absolutely unwatchable. I mean, I could not get through Copper. I tried, and there was like 20 minutes in, there was like, now I know why Bruce Willis was such a pain in the arse in that film. He was probably disgusted by what he was before he's seen the scenes. I'm pretty much sure he was like, oh my God, what man?
Yeah. It's almost like people were coming to Kevin Smith and going, I need you to make a Kevin Smith movie. And he really doubled down on what he thought a Kevin Smith movie was. And to kind of not great results, I think.
Yeah, it was just very vague, very lazy jokes around the character stuff.
Yeah.
And it was, you wanted the character stuff, not the lazy jokes. And it was like, he went for the stuff that was easy. And it was like, no, you have to do the other things a bit. I think that's not good. But yeah, I mean, it's a shame, but it was always kind of limited talent, but it was a shame he kind of ignored what his talents were.
Yeah. I think Chasing Amy and Mallrats especially get by on the fact that he had pretty good casts in them, and he let the actors, like Jason Lee especially, kind of do Jason Lee stuff there, give him probably his most successful theatrical role anyway.
Yeah. You can see Ronin's really enthusiastic with Kevin Smith.
I remember watching them when they came out and liking them, but I haven't really revisited them.
Yeah.
I was into Hal Hartley at that time. So.
Oh yeah, he's pretty disgusted by us, really, Chris.
I was like,
I think he's looking down on us.
He's like, I put out a Katano and you fucking go Kevin Smith. Like, my God.
I'm quitting this podcast right now.
Life is a tapestry.
Yeah.
So, Nazrin, what's your second underrated?
My next one is actually the Quatermass Hammer trilogy.
Ooh, good shout.
Yeah, because I adore these films. I saw them when I was a teenager and they just knocked my socks off because they're so cool. Yeah, nowadays some of the effects don't look great, but the idea's so good, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And especially Quatermass Experiment and Quatermass in the Pit, both have stunningly good ideas. You can still remake them today and they do great because they're so good.
Yeah,
even though they've been ripped off, doesn't matter. That whole thing, the first one was where the astronauts go to a spaceship, they come back, there was 3 in there, and then when we come back, there was 1, and the ship never opened once. So what happened to our 2 astronauts? Just that's such a great idea.
Yeah.
And Quatermass in the Pit about the idea of racial memory and what's in our psyche that causes it to violence. It's just great. They take it seriously. They have good actors playing Quatermass. They have good actors in support, especially the third one. Best Quatermass in the Pit is the best cast. The cast in that is terrific. They're just really well done. The second one's the weakest. Quatermass 2 is the weakest 3. That's probably the reason why I couldn't put it higher, but still, 1 and 3 are astonishing.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun and they're endlessly rewatchable.
Yeah, even when they don't have that much money on them, the fact is they were directed enthusiastically and had such a lot of ideas. It was like, well, that made up for their budgets.
Yeah. It's like a lot of the 50s B-movie science fiction horror. If they've got an idea, it doesn't really matter if the sets are wobbly or the monster's not that great.
Right.
So
I go on to my final underrated.
Your final underrated, indeed.
Yeah, because I want to hear your wild card.
My final underrated is Back to Japan. Wow. It's the Samurai trilogy.
That's what I thought you were going to say the last time.
With Toshiro Mifune. 3 films. They're all relatively short. It follows the main character, again, like the human condition. But this character is based on a real guy. And it just follows, again, really colourful, really beautiful shot. That beautiful colour from that period. Again, a character is not perfect. A character who makes mistakes, a character who starts with a huge ego and learns through his journey to give certain things away and give certain things aren't as important. But just ravishingly shot, great central performance by Mifune, and available in Region B, and on the big screen, they just look absolutely sumptuous.
Yeah, I have that film, that trilogy, but I haven't watched it yet. I've got it from Criterion. It's on my to-watch list. It's just not, I haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, I didn't get to it for ages. It was sitting on the shelves, but it's just so good.
Yeah, it's like it is on that to-watch list. It's just one of those ones that's like, probably months away from watching this one.
Yeah, and Mifune, again, as well, a lot of his characters, he starts off bullish and kind of full of self-confidence, but he kind of learns and changes. There's a character arc, believe it or not.
Wow. Such a thing as a character arc in films. What?
Yeah, it's hard to believe. It's hard to see nowadays, but
yeah.
But the Blu-ray, it just looks absolutely stunning.
Stunning, yeah.
So wildcard time, Chris.
Wildcard. Okay, so didn't really know how to interpret this, but I went for a trilogy of which I've only seen 2 of the 3 films, and if I'd seen the third one at all, most certainly would have made it. It's the Death Trilogy by Inarritu, which is Morris Paris, 21 Grams, and Babel, and I haven't seen 21 Grams, so I left it out. It's that kind of interconnected filmmaking of here's a lot of short stories, let's throw them together to kind of have some sort of convincing narrative. And I think it kind of sticks so well because of the end of Babel. I think, the sequence with Richie Sakamoto's Even Though Zoro, which I just love the play out of that film, just when they tie everything together and it just goes in the background. It's such emotional resonance for me when I watched it that I kind of went, oh, this is something else. Just, it ties everything together so perfectly. And Morris Paris is also great. 21 Grams, I definitely have to get around to see.
Yeah, I've only seen Babel myself. So.
I've got to say, I've seen 21 Grams and I hated it. I just hated it so much. It just thought it was pretentious twaddle. I just loved every second of it.
Ultimate wild card, I love it.
Yeah, no, it's just like, I was thinking, well, I'm going to save this one because 21 Grams is like one of my like overrated trash movies of the 2000s. It's one of the ones that's like, I hated that film so much.
I actually love it if I actually watch it and hate it as well, because it would just make this all the better.
Yeah. No, I just found excruciating that one. It was just like one of those films, like the director of those films is like, he's one of those directors I like, some don't like other ones. It's just like,
yeah,
it's kind of extreme using with me with him because it's like something I think he hits and something I think he misses. It's just like, well.
Yeah. Sometimes you just go too far. So.
Yeah. What do you think of Babel, actually? Because Babel's not a film that I hear many people liking as a thing, but
again, I liked it, but I didn't love it.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of ponderous in places, but
definitely.
Again, I mean, I probably need to rewatch it, but I've only seen it once, so
I think it's that ending for me just kind of blew the socks off kind of thing. The combination of music and I just love that piece of music anyway. So. Cool.
So, Nazrin, your wild card?
So that's some other Christopher Lee choice.
Go.
It's the Star Wars prequels. Hell with it. Just bring it up. Star Wars prequels. I know there have lots of flaws in them.
I knew it!
That's a wild card. But the definition of a wild card.
Yeah, they've lots of flaws, but they actually have a story. And it's like, well,
yeah,
they're very flawed films, but who cares? That actually was the films made by the director who wanted to make them. So you can't put them up there in the best list, but you see, look, there's some good stuff here as well amongst the bad stuff. It's like one of those ones is like you can enjoy something while knowing its problems, while seeing a lot of its problems, you still enjoy it and say, I still like it even though I know where the problems are. So for me, it's the Star Wars prequels, and I enjoy defending them just to annoy Star Wars fans because a lot of them are a bit self-serious and it's like, get a life, please. I mean, it's still Star Wars. Yeah. So that's what I'm going for.
I think I've watched them once.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Peter. I think Phantom Menace is the only one that's bad, and I only think it's bad because it's tonally weird.
Like, yeah, it's made by a guy who hasn't directed for a while. You can tell in certain places, and it's like
it doesn't fit with the rest of the canon, so to speak, and how they're done. And I know there was decisions made about why you want to do it that way, fine, but it just doesn't work. I think Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith are pretty good.
Yeah,
I think Attack of the Clones has got a pretty good reveal and a pretty good storyline to it. I think it's pretty successful.
It can get pulled down by the romance because the romance needed another writer to rewrite it.
You can block that out. I mean, that's fine. Yeah. All romance stories in all films you can kind of block out. I just kind of go, that's...
Well, the thing with that one, romance, I always thought, the guy, Anakin's meant to be awkward teenager. Awkward teenagers are excruciating when they try and talk. It's like, well, it's probably more accurate than most romances, actually. Just like, you're talking, it's like, oh, plus, shut up. Don't say anymore. But yeah, no, I still appreciate them. I think Revenge of the Sith is got a lot of fun stuff in that one.
Yeah, it's fun. The butchering of hundreds of kids at the end is just wonderful.
Yeah, I know. It's like, you can't believe the way in a Star Wars film they actually show.
Well, I remember sitting in the cinema going, I mean, is he? And then they just cut the end. They're like, oh, he did. Like, I'm glad I didn't have any small kids here beside me with 20 questions at this stage going, did he just?
Yes,
he did.
That's where my interest peaked.
Yeah. But that was the thing you were saying earlier about one of the other films. It's like it could be a Star Wars film. It's like it kind of really was.
Yeah.
But I don't want to give away my answer. It's like, yeah, they've already done that, and everyone hated it. And I also defend against those sequels that come out afterwards. The Disney one is like, at least this is the plot. At least this had something.
Yeah. They're okay as well. I mean, they're fine. They're contrived. They're whatever. But fine.
Yeah.
Star Wars movies aren't for me anymore. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So that's my wild card choice.
So my wild card.
You may have a good one here, Ronan. This may be.
It has to be the best one ever.
Yeah,
the best one ever.
You're going to be disappointed. The first one is the last time I was in the cinema, and it's not a reflection on the film. It's
1989. Here we go.
It was the Kung Fu Panda trilogy.
What a great choice!
Now, that is the last time I was at the cinema. The first Kung Fu Panda. Now, I'm not a Jack Black fan, but the thing that makes I enjoy these films so much, apart from where it's set, which I'm always kind of interested in that kind of thing anyway. But the villains are good. And I think that's the key point, especially for animations or films in general. You got to have a good villain. You know, the snow leopard in the first one, it's like a force of nature. It's got that, well, he's coming, and it's nicely cut together that this force is coming. You've got Gary Oldman's conniving crane. Is it a crane or so on? And the second one.
It's a crane. He's brilliant, though.
And again, you've got another force of nature in the third film. So the villains are really good. The actual Jack Black character, I'm not that interested about. It's the side characters that are actually more interesting. But the animation's really beautiful. And again, I just really like them. I was going to also, perhaps, the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, I think, is really well done as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that when we were talking. Yeah, because my niece and nephew loved those films. I've seen them so many times.
I think they're really well done as well. But I'll just give Kung Fu Panda the nod just for that's the last time I was in a cinema.
Yeah, I shall say the actual TV show How to Train Your Dragon is actually not that bad. I've seen most of them because of babysitting.
Yeah.
That's cool. No, Kung Fu Panda is a great choice. The second one, I say Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
I actually think that film's quite brilliant as well. Another main character in Jack Black's. It's the kind of this bumbling kind of non-event in some ways, and yet the films are successful because of it, in spite of it, should I say?
Yeah, the trope of the bumbling idiot that somehow manages to work everything out and everything's fine. You know,
but the second one he's very competent, which is kind of a bit weird. You know, in the first one he just kind of like falls on top of people, and people think that's how he wins fights. You know, because he's fat. But the second one is actually quite good. There's like a realization that comes to him. And the set pieces are wonderful. You know, the escape of the snow leopard in the first one out of the prison that nobody can escape from is just like so well conceived and just so well done. They're just a lot of fun. They may be my afternoon watches, you know. High five. Yeah, it's actually been a wee while since I've watched them, so it's put me back in the mood for them. Yeah, I mean, Hotel Transylvania trilogy, the first three are good fun as well for that kind of silly. Yeah, you know. Yeah, my kids love. Hotel Transylvania. Yeah, they're just silly. They're for kids. The kids love every of his joke. It's just like, again, the films I've seen so many times. Yeah. You can tell I babysat a lot. Yeah. But just the setting, the Kung Fu Panda as well. It's just Plus, you know, pretty much all Ronin's choices have been Japan. I can't remember the ones that weren't. Yeah. It's quite amusing. There was no Godfather trilogy. There was no Dark Knight, which was no. The only Star Wars was the prequels. I think we did pretty good. No aliens either. Even though we would have mentioned it, and not a Marvel trilogy in sight. Nah, I never even thought of Marvel trilogies at all. I just never. No, strangely enough, that never came up. The controversial one's probably no Die Hard trilogy either. You know. Yeah, if only that was a trilogy. I know. If only they stopped it. Yeah. Four's, again, blank the fourth one okay out. Apart from the jet fighter. Yeah. The jet fighter thing is the bit I almost nearly. I nearly walked out of the cinema at that stage. It's like Timothy Olyphant's fantastic in it. Yeah. I can stretch my imagination to a certain point, but hovering on the end of a jet is just something another level indeed.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because Oliphant steals the film without actually giving a shit at all throughout the film. You can tell he's picked up the check. He's just like, I don't care. Just give me the money.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't actually do that much. He doesn't go overboard, but he's still absolutely fantastic.
That's why you hire a good actor just to do these non-parts. Because he's not even a part. It's just he says mean dialogue once in a while. That's it.
Yeah. And the fifth one's just absolutely dire.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go to Chernobyl. Why not?
Yeah.
It's kind of like Dirty Harry series where when you get the fifth one is let's never speak of this film again. It's like
any other honourable mentions?
Well, most of my other wildcards were going to be pick any 3 films out of the Decalogue or pick any 3 films out of
Fair enough.
a run. Other ones to mention, the Cornetto trilogy, I think they're okay.
Yeah. I like the first one most, which is unusual for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is unusual.
The Faith trilogy by Bergman.
I had that one as well. That was the other one I was going to mention.
As well. So.
Yeah, and then the 3 Fantastic Journeys by Carl Zeman, even though it's not really a trilogy. I nearly had that. And
yeah, for wild cards, I had the Riddick trilogy because I thought they're fun, silly nonsense.
Yeah.
But I enjoy them. It's like I could put them on every so often and watch them because they're just fun B movies.
Yeah.
And Sister Street Fighter trilogy.
Yep.
I've got Infernal Affairs trilogy as a runners up. I've got the fantasy trilogy with Gilliam in the 80s, like Time Bandits Brazil, Baron Munchausen.
Yeah.
Spider-Man trilogy with Sam Raimi one.
Raimi, yeah.
Tetsuo trilogy.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Three Brothers, even though it's a bad finale, and Vengeance trilogy. Old Boy.
Nearly made it.
Yeah. So those are the ones I had. I didn't cover.
Yeah. I felt tough not to put the Vengeance trilogy in mine, I have to say, but every time I look at it, like there are 3 good movies, but Old Boy's so much, higher in my head than the other ones that are.
No, it's weird because I'm a Lady Vengeance person.
That's
so bizarrely.
Yeah,
that's interesting because it's Old Boy and the other 2 very good movies. In my head.
It's funny how we've got quite a few overlapping ones that we never talked about. It was like, because I kind of thought the Faith trilogy, if I didn't see it, Ronin would, so I just left it.
Yeah, I think it was about number 4 in mine, so number 5.
You went for Naked Gun.
I went for Naked Gun over the Faith trilogy. It is favourite rather than because I'm not as high in the silence as other people are. So the first 2 are masterpieces, but
the Orphic trilogy is probably another one where I haven't seen them all. So, by Cocktail.
Yeah, there's lots of trilogies. I mean, I can't avoid trilogies a lot of times. I hate the concept in a way because it's almost too neat.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's too neat. Oh, we had trilogy, so why can't you do 2? And that's it. There's 2, sometimes 2 of the better ones, then you get the third one is like, why do you go into the trilogy thing? It wasn't needed. And sometimes you need 4 or 5, doesn't just depend on the story.
Yeah.
I'll just add the Harry Palmer.
I was expecting that from you, yeah.
Which is a relatively new discovery of actually how much fun they are.
Yeah, I've seen 1 and 2 so far, but I haven't seen the third one yet.
Yeah, and A Better Tomorrow trilogy from John Woo.
Especially
the first 2. The third one is the weakest one, but the first 2, especially the climax of the second one, is just fantastic.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it's mind-bogglingly fantastic.
And some
sword comes out.
Some of Chunking Fat's weird acting in the second one's amazing.
Yes.
An uncle in the second one's amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my shocking things when they kill off Leslie Chung in the second one. It's like, I cannot believe they did that. That's like, you don't expect that in an action movie. Kill off the young lead character.
Yeah. But the ending of that is just amazing.
Yeah, I haven't seen part 3. I think because of that, the second one was like, why do I need a part 3? Well, that's the point.
Yeah, it does feel kind of unnecessary, and it is the weakest one. So.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm surprised nobody mentioned the Blade trilogy.
Thought about it.
Well, it's only really one great film, which is number 2.
Number 2, I agree. You know, 1's fun. 3, again, I can remember little to nothing about. I think as soon as I watched it, it was like, yep, that's the film.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds plays Ryan Reynolds before they started playing Ryan Reynolds.
I was going to say, but I don't think I've ever seen Ryan Reynolds play anything but Ryan Reynolds.
He was in, was that one when he was buried alive? He was pretty good in that one.
Yeah, that's probably his best film, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not the proposal, no.
No. That was based in fact when people actually tried to bury him.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the sequel to The Vanishing, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
The Vanishing trilogy. The third one, the zombie film.
Yeah.
Oh. That could have been a nice concept. 3 films that aren't a trilogy that could have been a trilogy.
Yeah.
I took maybe more thought and effort than I've got on a Sunday one.
Yeah.
We'll leave that for later.
Yeah.
So, do we any other thoughts on trilogies before we start this, or are we going any?
No, some are good, some are bad, and some are ugly.
Yeah, we covered quite a few.
See what you did there.
And it's not all serious stuff, so hopefully we give you ideas of what to watch.
Yeah.
I think one of the good thing was none of us had seen all the films that people chose. I think it was always 1 or 2 of them was like, I haven't seen that at all.
It's a good mix.
As you said, Peter, there's a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Yep.
There are a lot of movies.
The more I see, the more important what I haven't seen. Because it's like, I haven't seen that yet. It's like, God, there's only so much time. There's only so many films you can watch that are serious before you need a fun film as well. You need to try and balance it out.
It's crushing. The weight of the films that I have not seen is crushing to my soul.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, have you seen Morbius yet?
No.
I've saved you time. Don't bother.
Okay, thanks.
But by saying that, you've just made me think I should watch it. You know, Peter, that's not how this works.
You know?
Is it bad enough for a video? That's the question.
I've had enough one of my videos.
There you go. That's the benchmark. So that's worth watching then.
It's one of those ones that's like, I want to do a video on it, but I'm not sure if there's enough there. I need to find some angle on it, really. I'm sort of stuck.
Yeah.
But
Jared Leto films in general. Why do people keep on giving Jared Leto money to make these films?
Yeah,
featuring Morbius.
Yeah, I mean, the only really good thing that is Matt Smith, because he's doing so over the top. He's shooting scenery. He's dancing in some scenes and everything. He's just like, it's like he's figured out he's in a bad film. He's like, I'm gonna have some fun here. I'm just going to go way over the top now. I don't care. I'm gonna try my bit of trash. I'm going to make it watchable.
Yeah, but people give Jared Leto money to make albums as well. So
I know, it's like...
That's true.
It's the weirdest career because no one really likes his stuff. He keeps on getting hired. It's like weird. How do you do that?
He was good in Blade Runner 2049 because he was only in it for 15 minutes.
Yeah. He was directed by someone who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
But maybe they're just hoping. Maybe it's a bit like Henry Cavill's come full circle now from being like the most wooden actor, but you just give him actors that are wooden and he's great in them. You know, use the woodenness of the character to its strength, and then he's brilliant at it. He's perfectly cast.
Yeah.
All right, we should stop now before we slag off everybody.
Fair enough.
Right. So, hope you enjoyed this.
Thanks very much for watching. Please let us know in the comments your favourite 3, your 2 underrated, and your wildcard.
Yeah, and no death threats, please. No, none. No, it's not nice.
No.
Bye for now.
Bye.